We're going to use the Android X Jetpack ViewModel for this screen. We need to add a few dependencies for that. Looking at the Android X versions page, we can find the versions and artifacts for live data and ViewModel. They are part of the lifecycle group. Add the version values and then the artifacts to our Android X deps array in the project level build.gradle file. Next, we'll add those two dependencies to the home module's build.gradle file. And then we're also going to be using the app repository, so add a project dependency on the repository project. Also add the Dagger core and compiler dependencies. Remember, for the compiler, we have to use capt. Since we're using capt, at the top, apply the Kotlin capt plugin and run a Gradle sync. Our fragment will be responding to view state updates from the ViewModel. Let's create a class that'll represent this view state. Create a new class called HomeViewState, and we're going to use Kotlin's sealed class to give us an explicit list of options of what this view state can be. Using sealed classes, we can have different values for different options. First, we'll have a loading state with no properties. This can just be an object. Next is the loaded state that contains a list of repo items. And finally, we'll add an error state that contains a string for the error message. With sealed classes, we get help from the Kotlin compiler by way of ensuring exhaustive handling in when statements, as well as smart casting. Sealed classes are basically like more powerful enums, again, since each option can contain different values or no values. I find that they are a great way of representing view state. Now we'll create a home ViewModel class. This will extend the Android X ViewModel. We'll use mutable live data of type HomeViewState in a private field and set the initial value to HomeViewState loading. And then we'll expose this as a live data to the fragment. We need the app repository, so we're going to inject that in the constructor. In the init block, get the top repos from our repository and update the view state with HomeViewState loaded. We'll have to map these repository repos to repo item, which is the model that our adapter expects. If we try to build this, we can see that there's a compiler error. The home module does not have access to the module that defines repo API model. This was a miss on my part, as we need to expose the GitHub API project from our repository module as an API dependency. If we open the build.gradle file in the repository module and change implementation to API for the GitHub API project dependency, that will fix this for us. This means that any module who depends on repository will also get the GitHub API project dependency. A good rule of thumb is if your module's public API exposes models or objects from another module, that should be exposed as an API dependency. One module shouldn't have to depend on two separate modules just to get a single module to work. This also highlights a big reason why a highly modular project is desirable. In our case, our whole module has access to the GitHub API interface, which it will never use. A slightly better way to set this up would have been to have the API models in a separate module from the GitHub API interface. This is one of the small shortcuts that will be taken in this course, since it's not necessarily valuable in the context of getting familiar with Dagger, but keep this in mind when designing your own projects. We're missing a big piece now: how to actually inject this view model in a fragment, since we can't do it directly, since that would break how view models work. For this, we need two things: a component for our HomeFragment and an injectable view model factory that will be able to provide this view model.